Hi Radwa. So, more essays? Great. Let's take a look at what you wrote today. Nowadays, people are influenced by fashion, in particular when choosing their clothes and hairstyle. Is it a positive or negative development in your opinion? To what extent do you support this development? Now, this is a really interesting question, Radwa, and let me tell you why. Because it's two questions, which means, of course, you have to spend a paragraph on each one. The risk that a lot of people run into here is that they sometimes answer it's a positive trend, it's a positive development, and then they say, yeah, I support it because it's positive, but what they end up doing is they repeat themselves, and you want to be careful about that, okay? So there are a lot of ways to do this. Let's see how you dealt with it. Okay, the issue of influence by fashion has grown over the last few decades. Experts throughout the world have debated its consequences. I personally believe that the drawbacks outweigh the advantages. Okay, great. Some people argue that interest in fashion is essential nowadays and it has positive impacts. Such an interest will permit individuals to dress well and look perfect, not perfectly. Perfect here. You need the adjective, not the adverb. Subsequently, they would be more pleased and the level of confidence would be much elevated. Okay, let's fix this. This expression here, they would be more pleased, doesn't mean anything. I mean, what do you mean? That they'll have greater self-confidence, their self-esteem is raised because they know that they present an outward appearance of, I don't know, beauty, and I'm not sure, but this doesn't really tell us anything. Okay, not to mention the good impression left behind. All right, as it is undoubtedly true that people tend to judge others externally. Yeah, you can't really start a sentence like that, though. Probably should have just been connected to the previous one, although it does make it a little long, so maybe you should rethink how to phrase this, these two sentences here. For instance, recent studies revealed that the way people dress without how, you either say how people dress or the way people dress. So, recent studies revealed that how people dress and look represents, I think it's S because it's really one thing, one of the most significant factors during job interviews, both because, again, not a full sentence, both because of their confidence level and because of the good impression. As a consequence, this may open many doors for them to achieve their goals. Therefore, it is conclusively clear that fashion interest is a positive development. Okay, hold on, because the examples you talked about didn't really deal with fashion. I mean, you were just talking, it sounded more like you were just talking about presenting yourself in an acceptable, in a way that shows that you take care of yourself. I mean, that could mean that you dress nicely, but not necessarily follow fashion. I mean, I think following fashion is something different. It's making sure that you're following trends, that you're, wearing the most in brands. So, for example, your example here with the job interview, I mean, people usually dress nicely, but in a conservative sort of classic way. So, not really sure that this paragraph has talked about fashion as fashion. It sounds more like you're just talking about taking care of yourself and looking appropriate and respectable. All right, so be careful with this. Okay, then, although paying attention to the external look, to external appearance is better, without the. So, although paying attention to external appearance is largely important, over-obsession with fashion, however, can beget negative consequences. There is ample evidence that people who are influenced by fashion are markedly distracted. In other words, they tend to be directed away from their own goals. This is because they usually usually not only waste much time on following up fashion's recent trends and updates, but also waste much money on buying the elite brands. For example, recent empirical research showed that the cost expenditure on fashion much exceeded that of money spent on empirical research, on education programs and courses. Thus, it is possible to state beyond doubt that caring much for fashion, too much for fashion, would rather direct individuals away from their personal career development. In the argument stated above, I believe that the influence by fashion is a negative development rather than a positive one. Okay. Okay, so, I gotta be honest with you, I'm a little confused because you told me that the drawbacks outweigh the advantages. Okay, and then here you say, some people say that it is essential and has positive impacts. Then, here you say, it is conclusively clear that fashion interest is a positive development. Okay. And then, you talked about negative effects of it. Okay. And then, down here, your conclusion is that it directs people away from their personal career development. And then here you tell me it's negative, more negative than, so I'm a little confused. So you tell me it's negative, you tell me it's positive, all right, and you tell me it's conclusively clear that it's positive. And then here you say, yeah, it's positive, but don't overdo it. And then here you tell me it's negative. So basically, your position is not clear throughout. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't talk about both sides. I just wanted you to really be a little more specific. Like, so for example, here, rather than telling me it's conclusively clear, you could have said that following fashion insofar as it helps somebody to present a confident face to the world can have positive implications, okay? So just kind of qualify that rather than telling me it's conclusively clear, especially when here and here you told me that you think it's negative, okay? And remember then how the questions were phrased. Is it a positive or negative development? You could have said that it's a negative development on the whole. Okay, that people become obsessed with it, that people lose sight of their goals, they are just, be interested in following fashion and having the most up-to-date brands and so forth, and that it's created a culture of consumerism, okay, that it's made us more materialistic and has led us away from, the things that are really important in life, blah, 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 blah. Then, you could have said, to what extent do you support this development? Then here you could have said specifically, just answer the question as specifically as possible. I support fashion, as I said before, insofar as it helps present a positive face to the world, especially in instances like in our jobs where we want to show ourselves as being competent and confident as well. It shows a certain amount of self-esteem, and I think it shows a certain amount of self-esteem when you care about yourself and when you take care of yourself. However, I also think that there are many drawbacks if people get too caught up in this kind of thing. So you could have structured your paragraph like that, okay, where here you talked about the fact that on the whole you think it's a bad thing, but then here you could have talked about, since they asked to what extent do you support this, you could have gotten really into specifics saying how, on the one hand, there are some good things about it, but it can be taken too far, and that's where it's a problem. So if you really, really, really pay close attention to how the questions are phrased, then it will help you with your task response. Okay, I spent a really long time with task 2, so let's go straight into your task 1. The graph shows the rainfall level in ML in 3 different regions. Careful, 3 different regions. S, okay, month by month. Careful with your typing throughout 2018. In England, the highest rainfall levels were reported in December as because it's levels, they reached about 125. This is followed by July and September, in which they show equal levels, about 122. just next to them came January and February, where the rainfall levels were ranging around 110. The lowest levels were, however, reported in June, where it reached, again, they reached near 70. In Scotland, the highest rainfall levels were shown both in March and in October, where they represented 125 mLh. This was followed by January, where they reached 115 and 110. On the other hand, the lowest levels were shown both in February and April, where they dropped below 50 rainfall levels. In the remaining months were, however, fluctuating, just fluctuated, simple past. Okay. In Wales, no colon here, please, just write full sentences out. In Wales, rainfall levels were higher than 100 ml only in 3 months, namely July, May, and November, not in a descending manner. No. Namely July, May, and you could have said, like, in order of rainfall, or something, just, but no, not in a descending manner. That's not appropriate. It doesn't work well in English when you phrase it like that. Okay, whilst rainfall levels dropped below 50 ml in January and April, then again, no, that's not a full sentence. It's a fragment, so you need to kind of attach this to the previous sentence. The marked drop was evident in April, yet you shouldn't have a capital here. In the remaining months, rainfalls were changing between 50 and 100. Okay, not changing, they fluctuated, or they ranged between, not they changed between. Overall, the least degree of fluctuation throughout the year was evident in England, whereas the highest degree was evident in Wales. Okay, so now let me tell you some things about this quickly. A few things. First of all, I felt like these two paragraphs were like copies. I mean, it was very repetitive, the way you said, okay, these were the highest, these were the lowest, and this is what happened, da-da-da. So I wanted a little more variation. Another thing that I want to point out is that this is a dynamic graph, okay? So you have a year. You start with, it starts with January and ends with December. So rather than starting with the high point and the low point and then all the in-between, for the reader to get a clear image that this is something chronological, I think it makes more sense to start from the beginning and then talk about the end, and then you can say, or not even necessarily talk about the end, but the key points here are the beginning points, the end points, and then these highs and lows in between. So I always prefer when I know what that starting point is. Okay, for me, the starting point and the end point are really, really important in a dynamic chart like this. And dynamic, I mean in the sense that it shows change over time. So I wouldn't necessarily have started with the highest and the lowest. I would have started with, this is where everybody was in January. This is where, these are some of the key features in the middle. And this is where everybody ended. Okay, I think that information is really, really vital. Rather than just kind of picking the high points in the middle. All right, because it is chronological. All right, so lots of information in this video correction. I hope you found it helpful. I hope it helps you to improve in your next essays. So I leave you with that. Good job, and good luck writing.